Ladies and gentlemen, it's my very great pleasure to welcome you all this evening, and especially our two speakers who've come down from north of England and will speak on their experiences, two on a motorbike, Lidice remembered, but also in the footsteps of the parachutists, and they will speak about how they met also and what they're doing, the fantastic work that they're doing in the Czech Republic as well. So it's my great pleasure to introduce John and Jiřina Peers, and I turn the floor over to you. Thank you.
Dobrý večer. Sadly, that's more or less as much Czech as I know at this moment, and I'm having lessons, and it's the most difficult thing I have ever done in my life is to learn another language. As English people, we're the laziest people in the world as far as languages are concerned. Okay, so the theme today, more than anything else, I've done quite a lot of these talks about various things about my motorcycle trips, but the essence of this story, which is really this audience more than anybody else is going to be very interested in lots of aspects to this, is it's all about coincidence, the coincidences that have brought Gina and I together. So we got to go back almost 80 years. My father was born in 1929, which meant that he was 16 years of age at the end of the war. And he told me the story of what it was like to be that precise age in that precise year. And it was essentially an anticlimax to him and all of his school chums in that era, in that year, of school. They were all wound up. They'd had 6 years of believing that they were going to be following their older brothers and relatives to war, and suddenly it was all over. And he felt an anticlimax. That's the way he described it. He said, we were pumped up, we were ready to go. And what we did in Britain, and please don't ever forget that we weren't occupied in Britain, so therefore it was a very different situation to all of mainland Europe. And what we did immediately after the war in 1946 was we sent in our youngsters to do a security job, is the best way of describing it. We wanted our injured and troubled soldiers back in their homes, and we sent 17, 18, 19-year-old lads. There's plenty of horror stories of them, quite a lot of them being the very first into concentration camps. Some of them mentally never got over those scars. My father was very, very, very fortunate, and he went to Berlin, where he saw very different pictures. He saw the German women petrified of the Russians, for example. German women welcomed the Americans and the English in many respects. And he witnessed a lot of things that he ended up as a bank manager, which is quite ironic. He saw the economy crumble. He saw people walking down the street. We all know of these stories, but my father actually witnessed them. People walking down the street with a wheelbarrow of Deutschmarks to buy a loaf of bread. You may have seen, I'm sure you have, postage stamps overprinted. I think the biggest one I've got is 10 million marks overprinted to post one letter. Absolutely incredible economy. Collapse. And it was fascinated him. And he was very, very fortunate that he realized that he was watching history being made there and then. And as a result of that, one of his commanders-in-chief came along to him and said, "Young Peers, come here." He said, "I understand you're interested in what's going on." And my father said, "Well, I'm watching history being made. This is an era. We're watching something molding, something changing. So I'm taking it all in." And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I've noticed you have." And he said, "And I believe that you've got 2 days off starting tomorrow morning." And my father said, "Well, that's news to me. I don't think I've got 2 days off." And he said, "Well, you jolly well have, young man." He said, "You're coming with me." And this fellow, and sadly I don't know his name, and my father passed away 20 years ago, so I can't ask him. But this fellow put my father in a Jeep and drove him to the village of Lidice. Quite amazing. And in effect, that one single thing has transformed my life and has brought Gina and I together. there's a lot more coincidence to the story, but essentially, there's your number one. So my father went and he passed that story on to me. And in the 80s, when it was still Czechoslovakia, was my very first trip in a different life. My first wife I took, she didn't enjoy it. We went on a motorbike and we went to what was Czechoslovakia then, and I visited the village for the first time. Now, I've been to lots and lots and lots of concentration camps over the years to pay respects. I've been to all the usual, if you like, always to pay respects. And I've never felt any desire, any reason to go back to any of them. I did them, I went there, I learned about the individual stories. Every concentration camp has an atrocity of its own enlightening story. So I would watch that and I would take it all in, but not have any reason to go back. But the village of Lidice drew me back. I don't know why. Perhaps it was the connection with my father. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't have an answer to that. And it drew me back on 4 or 5 occasions. And not the most recent, for goodness sake. I live half my life just 20 miles down the road from there now, so I visit there regularly now. But after a few years of not going there, 4 years ago, I decided that I was doing a solo motorbike trip to Siberia. I went to Russia. I was doing 28 countries in 30 days. And I decided that yet again, this village drew me back.